war and gore and weird internet subcultures and furries and COVID vaccines.
Welcome to Crash, the technology podcast about everything else. Today, that's the power struggle at the top of the AI tree, the power struggle for AI sovereignty, and the power struggle between those looking for jobs and those desperately trying to get AI to do the work. I'm Alex Hudson.
And I'm Chris Stokel-Walker. How have you been, Alex?
Full of tech, shithousery, nonsense. I've sort of propped up a phone on the world's cheapest tripod and I can't see you because nothing worked. Everything is broken. And I'm probably in shock, which is fine, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just tired. How are you?
It'll be fine. I'm also tired, but I haven't been fighting my tech too much. Well, I have a little bit. I've been fighting some of my malfunctioning AIs and trying to bring them back into responsible activity. But yeah, I haven't been having the nightmare that you've been having.
You put me onto No Scroll last week. So first point is I downloaded the wrong No Scroll,
Yes.
which was a whole... Here's how to not... It banned me from using TikTok for some reason that I don't fully understand what that app was. So then it grayed it out, and then I had to delete it. Anyway, so No Scroll, if you weren't listening last week, essentially is this agent that gives you a news rundown, so you don't have to doom scroll through all of the apps. It does it for you, and within about 6 hours, it hit its API limit. It couldn't access X or Twitter anymore, depending on what name you use. And it apologized. Then it gave me a wrong report from 2024 saying this was breaking news. Then it told me I was wrong. It is the sassiest AI I've ever engaged with. And it is interesting, but it is so strewn of errors. So
yeah. You need to be careful with anything to do with AI, right? It always needs to be the case. And I'm going to claim credit for the fact that maybe it was you that pushed it over the limit, Alex. You were the one user that went too far in the initial usage of their API limitations. I think they probably hadn't realized quite how popular it would be. And actually, I think it built up a bit of a head of steam, and they sort of trammeled through their X API limits, because I had the same thing happening, and they said that it was, well, again, it was sassy. So No Scroll was saying that this was my fault because I had asked for too many things during the course of a day. You know, it said like, well, actually, most people will use this once a day, whereas you're using it 8 times a day. So is it unsurprising that if you're like querying all of your Twitter feed 8 times a day and that you're running through your monthly allowance? But then it kind of did a little bit more scouting around and found out that actually it was a broader issue. What was fascinating about it was that the folks behind it, who are kind of like, I think they're a little bit crypto bro, a little bit Web3, they were sort of pleading on Twitter to get access to Nikita Beer, who was the person who would oversee these sorts of things about how they can urgently up their API usage by paying more, I guess. So, you know, victim of its own success, but you're right, it fundamentally has that issue of, you always still need to have the human in the loop. There is a massive risk with AI. A lot of academic research that I've been reading, some of which, by the way, has been given to me by No Scroll. My experience of it is that it's hallucinating a bit less than yours is. That says that
are you in the pockets of big No Scroll?
I am big No Scroll, backed by crypto. I'm such a crypto bro. But there is this interesting, there's a growing consensus within the scientific research community that actually hallucinations are always going to be there, that you can't iron them out just because of the way that large language models are designed, the underpinning technology behind these AI systems. And so with that in mind, I think you always have to be just very cautious about what it is that you're encountering. But it has found us a whole load of nuggets of stuff that we can talk about today as well.
I mean, yeah, to say that I'm giving it a troll at the top, yet we were looking through our planning list today, and I think 40% of the stuff we're going to talk about directly comes from things that were suggested by No Scroll. So the stuff that it didn't make up, the stuff that actually makes it, the stuff that I hadn't spotted, some of the stuff that I've put on the planning list for the next couple of weeks that we would never have found because it's like a Substack post with like 3 comments on it, which is wild. But also, I'm slightly scared that things are taking over and it's getting a little bit frightening now, maybe.
Don't deny that. So you found a weird Substack post. It surfaced for me a person who has scraped 241 UK council planning portals and produced a website that looks at 2.6 million decisions and lets you know whether or not you're likely to get your planning permission approved or not based on where you live. So this is another crazy example of like how it plucks the needle out of the haystack.
I feel like if we keep talking about it, we're going to make sure that NoScroll smashes through its new API limit. So I'm sorry, you're welcome. For which we apologize. Anyway, what else have you been up to?
I bought a second mini PC. Amazon is an incredible thing. I mean, Amazon is an awful, awful website, by the way, to be clear, but it's also remarkable. I ordered a mini PC at 3 p.m. and I had the mini PC in my hand by 7 p.m. that night.
Yeah, but was it the cheapest you could have got it? Are you aware of all of the alleged issues with their employment? Are you aware of Amazon are very expensive lawyers? We're going to be very careful with what I say here, but are you okay with that?
I'm not okay with it, but I think I'm a pragmatist where this is happening now. And so, having reported on a lot of that stuff, knowing about stuff that I can't yet report on because I can't quite get it over that line of this is okay to publish and okay to talk about publicly, I'm aware that there are very, very fundamental issues. But it's in the same way that I can feel discomfort like you do at the fact that like the AI is getting too good and actually like that has its interesting kind of consequences while also recognizing that there are real benefits to it. I'm able to hold two things in my mind at the same time, which is that Amazon is not good and harmful to what we're doing in terms of labor and things like that, while also recognizing that it is a marvel of both the joy and the incredible terribleness of modern society and modern capitalism that you can order something like that and it can end up at your door within 4 hours. For all of the terribleness behind it, I do think that's like, I sort of feel like the first person who saw a car rolling off Henry Ford's production line. Like this is like you can't not be in awe of it while also simultaneously looking at it in horror.
Deliveries got slower. Delivery used to be an hour. Delivery used to be within 30 minutes. There was that when Uber Eats launched, there was that whole thing when if they couldn't deliver it in 30 minutes, you got it for free. And that was, of course, an idiotic marketing strategy because you just pick the restaurant that's furthest away, and they must have lost so much money doing that. But that was 30 minutes, and then Amazon had that hour delivery, and then everyone tried to copy. eBay briefly, I think, experimented with something like it. I think just in certain areas, I don't think it ever reached the UK of really quite pacey delivery. And now he kind of going back into, there was that whole Royal Mail story a couple of weeks ago where they were like, you can't expect us to deliver 80% of first class post the next day. What are you, crazy? And you can just see the economics and the capitalist reality and the profiteering and the margins of all of these things. And actually, most people don't care if they have to wait an extra day for something, or it becomes, you pay ASOS an extra £10 a year, or however much the ASOS Premier thing is, and you get everything next day. If you pay Uber a bit more, you get your food quicker. All of those things, it feels like it is an upsell rather than it being this core priority to get things quickly anymore.
Not to discredit or deny that existed, but I will say that's the most London coded thing that you've ever said, because I don't ever remember Uber Eats in half an hour or Amazon in an hour. That's the joy of living in the nation's capital where everything is convenient and everything is based and everything is served for you.
I think knowing what I know now, I would not have done it the way that I did. But for maybe 6 months, twice a week, we would just eat for free. And that is hopefully Uber Eats ate that, and all the restaurants got paid exactly what they were. But I'm not certain of that. I get that there's no way to be sure, and so ultimately, that is a horrific way to operate. If they're still screwing over those restaurants, if the restaurants still got paid and it's Uber who missed out, fine, wonderful, great success. I got fat, everything was great. If it wasn't, I'm a terrible, terrible capitalist who has eaten for free for 6 months. So we'll see.
I'll leave the listeners to decide on that. But I will say, if you're the reason why I only get a £1.47 refund on a freezing cold meal through Uber Eats and Deliveroo, then that makes me very angry.
That's perfect pricing. That we can talk about in a full episode, because the perfect pricing, it actually equates over to perfect discounts. So they know the sorts of discounts that you will accept as being acceptable to continue your relationship. They will refund people like me, social justice warrior as I am, in a sort of first world problem sort of way, all of that money. There is understanding around what perfect pricing means in the refund space. Anyway, we should probably move on to something that isn't, albeit one of my biggest strengths. We should probably move on to the real story. So, the trial between Elon Musk and Sam Altman has reached the courtroom. So, well-known philanthropist Elon Musk claims that OpenAI, which was set up as a charity, has been stolen, is no longer open source, and is sufficiently non-profit anymore. So, the tail is wagging the dog, Musk has said, according to AP. So, Musk was a co-chair of OpenAI when it was founded in 2015, with its stated aim to advance AI to benefit humanity as a whole, without being driven by a financial return, according to court documents. So Musk left the board in February 2018, which was, it is said, because of a potential conflict of interest with Tesla's own AI work, especially around self-driving, according to the releases at the time. The actual reason, or at least the heavily rumoured reason, is a lot more complicated. Heavy reporting and OpenAI's own filings, particularly in this court case, it's more of a failed power struggle, with Musk leaving after failing to take control, including a proposal to combine OpenAI with Tesla. So the actual truth is kind of part of this case, so we're not going to take a view on it either way. According to Altman's lawyers, the case only exists because Musk didn't get his own way, and OpenAI's lawyer, William Savitt, told jurors that the case exists because Musk just didn't get control, and argued there was no binding promise that OpenAI would stay non-profit forever. And it's the perfect court case. Mega celebrities testifying, so Altman, Musk, alongside Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella and others. It's the world's richest man fighting it out with at least two of the most influential people in the world, with the underlying reality that this case may define, or at least be part of the definition of what the future of charity law is, the future of AI regulation is, and the future of accountability more generally. So, can an AI lab use a non-profit public good mandate to attract money, talent, and moral legitimacy, then suddenly become the dominant commercial infrastructure and then profit from it? And irrespective of that, is it the job of former board members who are now the richest people in the world, nearly a decade on from actually being involved with it, to try and get the courts to decide this question? Luckily, someone I know quite well has written a really deep read on this precise issue. Chris, what the hell is going on?
It's very expensive therapy, is what it is. It's the long and the short of it. I
Done.
mean, look,
next topic.
Yeah, no. I'm annoyed. You know, when you get professionally jealous as a journalist of someone who got an amazing quote. There was an amazing quote. I think it was in the Verge write-up of this ahead of the court case. So I think it was published late last week, where a legal expert in the United States had basically said, "Look, Elon Musk stands no chance of winning, and none at all." Bear in mind, Polymark and prediction platforms like it are far from perfect predictors of what is going to come. Not least,
I hear Polymark is better than any other polling company. That's what I heard on this really good podcast that I listen to sometimes.
We heard this last week. However, I'm not so sure how legally literate the average Polymarket user is. So whether or not they can actually predict the outcome of a case like this, not so certain. But they basically say that Elon Musk has like a 30 to 33% chance of winning, which means probably, when you skew the fact that like the users there probably like Elon Musk a lot, I think it's far less than that. And actually notable that one of the branches of what he was trying to argue disappeared before the case even started. Some might say actually because the judge nudged him towards that and said actually it's probably better for you to do so. But with that in mind, I do think that what this does for us is this basically says, well, actually you can set up a non-profit, you can materially change what you're doing, and you can get away with it. And that has its own ramifications, because there's no way he's going to win this case. And so that is, I think, a big moment, not just because of what the outcome will be in terms of, well, Elon Musk gets vanquished, but in terms of what the outcome means in the long run, which is, as you said, this impact on charity. I talked to Anupam Chandra about this from Georgetown University. He's really worried that actually this sets a precedent where people can just set up as a charitable cause, they can make a load of money, they can then change materially how they operate, and basically bilk the people who ended up funding them in the first place.
And I think my favorite quote from your piece, if you haven't read it, it's on The Independent. Highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite pieces that Chris has written. I forget who said it, and I forget the exact words. Something like the quote of like, they're just two of the least likable people in the world, or whatever. What was that quote?
Yeah, it was literally that. They're two of the least likable people in the world, and you can quote me on that. Andrew Squadamouche gives
Great
a
name.
lot of really good quotes like this. He did one for a New Scientist piece where I spoke to him. He's very unguarded in some of his comments, I think. Which is always interesting.
It just shows what professional Chris is, that there is some phone ringing in the background, and he's just did that entire monologue with me dicking about with the camera because it didn't look right. So it's having to watch me wave around for the camera. Didn't even hit. It's not even editing. It is just a faultless, like, the man knows how to broadcast. It is a beautiful thing.
Fine. It's my landline, so it will only be my parents if it's my parents, or it'll be a spam call. And it's 99% certain it'll be a spam call. And if it's not, then they will presumably ring my phone on that I have next to me.
Well, later in the program, you will hear about Lib Dem's shocking claim about fraud. So we'll, there you go, dwell by. Anyway, so I don't know what Musk's is it. My assumption is that Musk is doing it to try and limit OpenAI's success and to at least put a little speed bump in or do something with OpenAI's growth as Anthropic is, depending on which expert you believe, is becoming the dominant force in this space. So actually, it's no longer that Altman has the absolute power that he did have maybe 12 months ago, definitely 2 years ago. Is Musk doing this just so Altman doesn't win? Or is it more the case that actually Altman already isn't really winning? And then if that happens, Musk can take credit for bringing him down?
So you have to bear in mind that anything to do with Elon Musk is only within Elon Musk's mind. And even then, I'm not entirely certain that he knows what he's doing all the time. So, with that caveat, I think there are kind of multiple overlapping issues here. One is just that Musk is a messy bitch. And he really just wants to kind of like distract and annoy Sam Altman.
And
right?
you can quote me on that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can, right? But it's true. Like, I mean, look, this is... In the first day of the trial, the judge had to say to both parties here, you need to stop messing around on social media. You're dicking around on social media, calling each other names in the course of the trial is not okay and not becoming of two people of your stature in business. So stop it. And like, if you have to do that as a judge, then that I think is kind of notable as to what is happening. So there's the fact that, yeah, Musk is a messy bitch. Then there's also the fact that he is a very clever, conniving businessman. He is trying to launch his blockbuster IPO. He wants to be the first to the market out of those big three AI labs that are looking to IPO either this year or early next. He sees that Sam Altman, that OpenAI, wants to also do that later this year. And he thinks, well, yeah, if I can make OpenAI the third horse in the three-horse race in terms of getting to the market, because bear in mind, actually, the numbers involved here almost seem unsustainable. Like the valuation of each of these companies is greater individually for one firm than the entire value of every IPO that's ever had in a single year. So, like, it is just monumental, gigantic, and we're expecting 3 of these to appear at once, buses. If he can kind of throw question marks into that process for the IPO, if he can make people go, not sure if I want to end up forking out for that, because actually maybe either there's a legal risk, a reputational risk, this moves on throughout and beyond that IPO process in terms of a drawn out legal battle or even further challenges to it, then I think that is mission accomplished for him. But he's not going to win. Like, this is both the most interesting lawsuit in the world and also the most boring lawsuit in the world, because it's just incalculably stupid as a lawsuit.
What happens then? So I'm not sure if you've heard the same rumours I have, and I haven't independently verified them. I don't know how likely this is to happen. Maybe you can shed some light on it about that. Actually, if they are going to be the third horse in this third horse race, there could be some sort of super merger between Starlink and XAI and smush everything into this. Musk's obsession with the super app is well known, not a surprise. But given that Starlink is one of the most successful and most profitable arms of anything Musk has ever done, including Tesla, now that stock is having a moment, is that possible, and what does that do to all of this?
Yeah, I mean, they're effectively the same company anyway, right? Because they end up being put in space on the back of SpaceX rockets. The one thing that was kind of made abundantly clear in the aftermath of Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter back in 2022 and into early 2023 is that he doesn't see a distinction between which of his businesses you work in. Like, he was dragooning in Tesla employees to try and develop a social media app in the aftermath of firing half of the staff or 70% of the staff or whatever it was. If you work for an Elon Musk company, you're actually working for Elon Musk and he will plug you in wherever he wants. So that idea of them being one and the same, I think, is not necessarily novel, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen. The challenge is, what is the underlying question behind why Elon Musk is doing all of this? And, I don't know where I sit on this, but the people I speak to, there are often a lot of people who are very cynical who say, well, look, this is all a house of cards. That some of this stuff is wildly unsustainable. Some of this is massively sustainable. SpaceX is really brilliant, totemic. Starlink is a really fantastic company that is on the grow, that is able to kind of wash its own face in terms of financial returns. And so the more that you bundle them together, the successful businesses can prop up the less successful businesses, which means that Elon Musk can continue his desire to pollute and tarnish the public square.
So we have SpaceX AI, that makes sense as a name. Tesla SpaceX AI, then you're getting too long with the names. So no one knows. And then does that mean that Musk runs for president?
Can he? Is he not South African, therefore he can't?
Yeah, but can Trump run for a third term? Hold on. I'm sure he can't, but if you search for this through the Googles, can Elon Musk buy a country? Can Elon Musk give everyone 1 million? Third is president. Fourth is end world hunger. Fifth, buy Ryanair. Sixth, code. Seventh, speak Afrikaans. So, let's click on the president.
I think out of those 5 of 7 are correct. Let you decide which ones aren't correct.
He is ineligible. He can run for senator or representative, and he can be political party chair. And I think there are a lot of grey areas, but the SEO of Pink News, it's Reddit, Wikipedia, Reddit, and Pink News are the top results, which means the internet is broken.
That is Pink News's AI staffing replacing their actual human beings. That is coming to the forefront here, probably.
So now that we can rest safely that Elon Musk definitely won't be president until the law changes, we'll be back in 1 second with more on what the Britain is going to do with AI. Welcome back. The UK AI hardware plan, due to launch at London Tech Week in June, has been announced by Technology Secretary Liz Kendall. It's been a wild flurry of releases from the government on all sorts of stuff, but we'll come to the reasons why in a bit. The plan is aimed at chips and semiconductor technologies across AI hardware and actually pragmatic plans for AI sovereignty, where the UK will not be reliant on overseas cloud services or hardware, at least not as much as it currently is. So it will not be autarky, a new word which I had not heard before until this speech. It means sort of economic self-sufficiency. We're not going to build everything ourselves, and we're going to be pro-investment. We're going to back British AI companies. We're going to work with allies, especially middle power countries. So I know we talk about how tech is the center of everything on this podcast, because it is, but this sort of middle countries principle and the timing and the growth is good stuff puts this at the absolute center of Labour messaging in the run-up to local elections, which must just be a coincidence. Chris, what does the actual AI hardware plan mean, and what was Liz Kendall talking about, both literally and symbolically?
It means autarky, doesn't it? It's one of my favourite words, autarky, because it's got a K in it where you don't think it should have a K in it. And I
had never heard that word until this morning.
Have you not? I never really understand what it means. It's one of those where you read it and you go like, this is a good word. Great, I'll move on to the next sentence, and not much else. So yes, I mean, this is good. So we are turning a corner, I think, in terms of UK tech policy. I can't quite remember the timing of it, but between a year and 9 months ago, we got some grown-ups in, people who are actually, tech literate, who know what they're doing, who have come in as advisors, who have come into DCIT, who are really, really useful and good and kind of tech forward while also being a bit realistic. They are going a few steps further ahead than perhaps most people would be comfortable with, and perhaps they're being cancelled out a little bit by the civil service, obviously at the front of people's mind in the UK this week because of all of the parliamentary hearings that we've been having, and just kind of recognising sometimes their best and most obvious way of helping out the country is to say no. There was a really good post by Alex Chalmers, who he I think still does run or is involved with Emergent Ventures. He's kind of like in the VC space. He's just one of those people who like thinks quite deeply about this, who talked about how the UK's tech policy, particularly on AI, is very much kind of stuck in neutral and doesn't really know what it wants to do, and was kind of getting under its own feet because of factionalism within the Labour Party and things like that. So really worth reading that post. But we are, I think, slowly starting to see the cogs turning and working with one another. And there is, I think, an opportunity here. Is the UK ever going to become sovereign? Well, this is a whole bunch of different things that you have to think about, including what is sovereignty and what does it mean and why is it important, that I don't think actually is the be-all and end-all. But it is useful that they are thinking a little bit more about it. And it was a shift, I think, in tone and language, particularly from the not from the Jeremy Kyle. Why am I saying Jeremy Kyle? Particularly from the Peter Kyle.
The AI program of if Jeremy Kyle was still on air, there would be some sort of AI.
I fell in love with a
escapade.
Chatbot. Yeah, and then like the humanoid is appearing on stage with a wife, and a really angry husband comes out and knocks the head off it or something like that, and snaps the arm off and starts beating the humanoid with the sort of detached arm of the robot itself or something like that. Peter Kyle just felt, and I think you can't judge people by their looks as well, but he wears too short suits, things like that. So he just looked like a small child who didn't really understand technology, pretending to be the technology secretary of the United Kingdom. Liz Kendall, admits some of her lack of.
You can't judge a person by their appearance, but here's me critiquing their suit choices.
Well, it was also that his arguments were really simplistic and childish, right? Like he had a childlike wonder about technology that suggested that he didn't really understand what technology was or how it worked, which is charming but unbecoming if you are the person who has to oversee the regulation and smooth introduction of technology across the country. Liz Kendall, I think, is much more realistic. She's much more honest. I think I talked about this a few weeks ago. She did a segment on Times Radio where she just answered a load of questions, and actually she was pragmatic. She was like, this is happening. This is a really important technology. She was also really pragmatic on the social media stuff, although they've kind of backtracked again on that in the last couple of days with a bonkers thing where they've kind of precluded the outcome of consultations by saying they're going to do something anyway on social media, which I don't think is very smart, but whatever. Sorry, I've now kind of just gone down 17 different tracks, but the idea basically is Liz Kendall is, I think, a more sensible voice. I think that the people who are behind her are being able to raise their own voices and be heard a bit more because she's a bit more of a kind of grown up, not to hanker back for the days of was Liz Kendall even in Gordon Brown's cabinet? No, but she was in that kind of semi-sensible post-Brown Labour shadow cabinet. And so I think it just feels like she's a politician from a different era of politics, which wasn't quite as everything's gone to hell in a handbasket, and felt a little bit more grown up and acts a little bit more grown up in how she deals with her red box, I think.
Do you think that's true? I think so. We're in an election period, so we need to be very, very careful with what we do and we don't say. I'll give you a brief rundown of what all the other buzzing about AI in a minute for the sake of broadcasting regulations. But It more feels like she is still harking back to an old time. She is still leaning heavily on the Blair Institute's reporting that has come over the last 2 years around AI. There's a lot of, if not repetition, very close mirroring of what the Blair Institute has been calling for. Secondly, that this is coming out at a time under the cover almost of darkness because of McSweeney's appearance in front of the select committee, which there's another couple of like really quite profound political announcements, including the sort of rent controls, at least to a certain degree. And there's all manner of stuff going on because people are fearing what might come after the local elections. It will at least be a significant reshuffle. So people are really keen to make policy before they are moved or whatever happens after the local elections. And it doesn't, it feels like she's just saying what everyone is thinking. And of course, I appreciate in politics that's quite a big deal. And that's actually surprisingly rare that people will just follow what the experts are saying. But it's trying to pick between what the Greens, Conservatives, Reform, the government will do is all really quite similar. So Conservatives have promised to defend intellectual property rights, but essentially close echoes of what the government have just announced. So the Greens policy is not that dissimilar, with more calls for regulation from MPs like Sean Berry, but there's no real centralised view that I can find. Again, if you want to prove us wrong, come on, Polanski, we've asked. Reform, basically in favour of deregulation, so light touch pro-innovation policies. But again, the only difference there is that the regulations should be run by companies rather than the state. And the Lib Dems had an event on Tuesday. So they identified 3 pillars for action. So backing British innovation, empowering people and building trust. And the third action is infrastructure for success, which lacks a verb. It really hurt my editor's brain, but that is verbatim. It was some sub-editor needed to see that. So it's basically exactly where you'd expect everyone to be. But the Lib Dems release had a bit of gold in it. So it really wanted to launch a national online crime agency to combat the surge in AI-enabled fraud, which now accounts for 44% of all UK crime, which is wrong. So according to the National Crime Agency, fraud accounts for around 44%. So again, that's accurate. But AI-enabled fraud accounts for around 2/3 of that. Lib Dems, get a sub-editor. We've asked Lib Dems for comment. We'll add it in the notes if they come back to you. Anyway, that's good election roundedness. We've done everybody. Chris, what the hell were we talking about before we were forced into broadcast law?
I don't know, but I want to talk about Lib Dems' inability to talk about data in any way. I mean, like, if we're talking about elections, Lib Dems can win here style charts on election leaflets. Yeah, that difference between the proportion of AI-assisted crimes and non-AI-assisted crimes is, I think, an indication of that. We were talking about Liz Kendall's sovereignty push, and then also the other party's approach to this.
So then if everyone is kind of saying the same thing, does that mean that all the rush on AI hasn't really been polarized, with everyone from Reform to Greens kind of having the same voice? So surely that means that, like you were saying, if Kendall is taking that more logical, more practical approach, no one's really arguing against it. So does that mean it's going to get a clean pass through, and this is the path forward, whoever is in charge?
Yeah, I think so. The thing that is different about this, at least, and this is, people will have different views on this, but at least with kind of the sovereignty aspect, having a consensus view that is forming around a certain point of perception of this is not necessarily a bad thing. We have this an awful lot. Like, people's political parties' views cluster around these things that they don't really understand, and now nobody wants to kind of stick their neck out and take a contrary view. That, I think, is bad in the case of a lot of kind of tech discourse. Like, if I'm looking back at my career over the last kind of 12, 13, 14, almost 15 years now, traditionally the kind of the view that I would always have is all the politicians are saying all the same stuff about tech, and they're all wrong because they're all ignorant about it. With this, at least, I can take out that they're all wrong aspect. They're still there. They're all saying the same thing, and most of them are ignorant about this sort of stuff. And frankly, I think probably all the politicians are. The people behind them perhaps becoming much less so, because I think they're actually getting a stronger voice. But it feels like this is not a bad position to take if you're going to take a position on this sort of stuff. I don't know. I mean, do you think that we're A-OK going ahead with Donald Trump's favorite, tech bros supplying our critical national infrastructure. I mean, I just finished a story about data centers in the Middle East for Tom's Hardware, and the view that that is a sort of bit of critical national infrastructure now, where you can either pull the plug or have something happen. Do you want to trust Donald Trump with that?
No, but I think it depends. This pragmatic. There's a lot of stuff happening in between the lines that we don't know exactly where it will lie at. So it doesn't want to exclude people. It wants to work with middle countries. All of that sort of stuff makes sense. But then, if you're working with middle countries, that is code for working with the EU more closely, and then you get into deep regulation and the suffocating bottlenecks that the EU is currently rowing 2 steps forward on, rowing 2 steps back on, trying to work out what it wants to be, whether it wants to be the safe space or the innovator, because it's trying to be both, and it's not necessarily working that well because people are incubated and given help, and then they fuck off to the US to make money. So it's that sort of that bind that the UK is in as it works out. The battleground is on how integrated the UK markets will be with the EU and what the special relationship with the US is. And so it's tech operating as a political tool and a markets tool more than it is actually about AI itself.
And there was an interesting blind item, basically sourced from nowhere. No actual kind of attribution on this story in the FT a couple of days ago about concerns that UK ministers need to kind of prevent just falling in line behind the EU on their AI rules. What's interesting, though, is that the EU is not united on their AI rules. The discussions to try and finalise agreement on whether or not and when to implement the AI Act across Europe, in typical Europe discussion mode, it went to the wire, and it turns out that they didn't get it over the line in the end, actually, because Germany is holding out and saying, well, yeah, we think that there should be carve-outs for industrial uses of AI because they don't need to be quite as tightly regulated. So, yeah, I mean, the idea that we should just kind of like, get in with the EU and become really chummy, I think is not useful. The argument that was being made there was we lose that idea of the Brexit dividend that we supposedly had of being able to make our own decision in our own way. I think on sovereignty, I think it's not a bad thing. It's an impossible task, right? You're never going to get it. And this is the thing that we talked about previously with the EU and their sovereignty drive around this stuff. You are overly reliant on far too many different parts of the world in order to supply even the hardware that can allow you to do the supply of your data centers or your AI inference or whatever it is solely within your own borders.
And if it was practical, either politically, societally, or financially, to have all of the data centers we needed bang in the centre of the British countryside, that would have already have happened. And the political risk is the NIMBYist vote is particularly in the sort of former Red Wall, the sort of swing constituencies, of which now most constituencies are swing constituencies. Looking at the recent poll of polls, means that to do that means risking your political future, and given the representative system we operate in, that's unlikely to happen. So that means that data centers and the more cloud element of it is unlikely to, and also financially, it's way more expensive to have here because of all of the cooling required, all of the energy required, a million different reasons. So that becomes impractical. When it comes to the innovators, we might, given the lack of funding into universities and then the tricky position that colleges and universities find themselves in, and the lack of EU funding, is really meaning the best and most brilliant minds around this innovation aren't necessarily still in the UK. I think a lot of them still are for the moment, but you can see that slow drip out of the UK. So then it's a case of what is, Kendall, what is being announced here that means that Britain can be this sovereign power of AI, because it is a small and ever shrinking country trying to become big in the emerging market in the next decade?
I don't know. I actually don't know about that. I think the thing that I guess the reason why I perceive it differently is I think you're looking at it from a kind of talent pipeline point of view. I'm looking at it from a kind of hardware point of view. And I think that,
both on brand.
Yeah, both on brand. Both of those are really important. But I think even on the talent pipeline point of view, the people who are much more in the know and much closer to the kind of developments feel extremely excited about what is happening at the minute in the UK. You look at OpenAI announcing their new office in London. You look at Anthropic doing the same sort of thing like a week or so before that. You look at there just seems to be a kind of swagger a little bit. Again, there are big issues with the fact that this is only basically in the London tech scene, and that is a real issue that we need to. I keep saying this, and we will get around to it. We need to get Tom Forth on the podcast to talk about how that's really, really bad. But it just feels like there is I don't know. It's almost like a Cool Britannia moment a little bit in terms of this, which makes you feel like actually that kind of you can paper over the fact that it's not very clear what Liz Kendall is saying, because there are people here who have the momentum, have the kind of the nous to be able to do this, and also they now have the ear of government to do so.
But then on that London point, so at least 1 million jobs in London are either highly or significantly exposed to the impact of AI. So this is a City Hall report, and the administrative roles face the biggest risk because they most closely align with AI's current capabilities. And London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who gave a speech in Madrid, because of course he did, that's exactly where he is. He said, if we take a hands-off approach, AI could cause significant harm to London's labour market. So if we are saying that it's all this London optimism, I think there's a whole different point around if Starmer could leverage Cool Britannia, he would have done a long time ago. And no one's linking Starmer
Keir Starmer
with
cannot
Cool.
leverage Cool Britannia, let's
Precisely.
be honest.
So if there is that hope of which you say, I don't think necessarily, I think there's a hope of one big unicorn from Britain. I think that you can see how that works. With the Cool, if are 1 million jobs really at risk, or is Sadiq Khan kind of scaremongering in the wake of elections, or trying to put his name in the ring for whatever happens with the Labour power struggle, whenever that happens?
I think that he realizes that he has to do something about AI, and so they've chosen to publish this report. There is an increasing discomfort with the reliability of these numbers around kind of job exposure to AI, because they are often produced by AIs themselves, and they're very mutable in terms of what they do. So, I was looking at a researcher at the American University School of Public Affairs just literally this morning, which suggested that the gap between how these things are presented and calculated by AI, which is increasingly being used for these sorts of things, is massive. So they asked 4 different LLMs how exposed individual jobs are to AI. One LLM said management is 15% exposed. Another one said it's 90%. Legal, it was 10% and 75% with the boundaries on this sort of stuff in terms of healthcare. One AI said that 60% of jobs were going to be affected. Another one said 5%. I think the reality is we don't know. And so, the idea that, it's a good headline. It's just that what is the reality behind it is incredibly difficult to get at. And I think that it's more just out there, not necessarily even as an electioneering thing. I think it's just this is a big thing that is in the public discourse. This is a thing that people are worried about. Therefore, it's incumbent on us to to publish something that says we are looking at this, we are aware of this, even if actually it turns out that the numbers are absolute baloney.
So some brilliant technology journalist wrote almost exactly 9 years ago that 40% of jobs will be taken by AI by 2030. And I kind of still stand by that bit of reporting. So it seems about right. So to close off this section, so we have asked all of the major parties to talk to us. So we're looking at you, Badenoch, Polanski, Starmer, Davy, Farage. We will chat to you at any time. Come on, chat to us. But otherwise, if you want to see their manifestos, the elections are coming up. So do Google, check out all of their policies and vote if you decide who to vote for, if you are voting at all. And given that bit of political speak, we'll be back with the final section to questions to which there is no answer in 1 second. Welcome back to the final part of this program, which, because I don't have a computer that works, I'm just blagging. It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. I don't know how long we've been recording for. Something will happen. This will be published. It'll be fine. Questions to which there are no answers. Chris, you want to go first, or shall I go first?
You go first.
Okay, this is going to get us sued. If the Met Police's Palantir system had flagged you as a person of interest, which piece of your internet history or content would you least want used as evidence?
don't comment on anything to do with Palantir because, as you say, this will get us sued. I can't answer that in a way that I think is useful. That doesn't mention at all Palantir or anything to do with that because they are the bolshiest of the people who like to push back on stories and things like that. More so actually than Amazon, I find in prior history.
We haven't done a full episode around Palantir, partly because it's a lot of effort, and partly because there's a lot of people really doing really interesting work on what Palantir are up to. So, highly recommend going out and seeing some of the reporting around Palantir's do's and don'ts and how the Met is and isn't using that software.
Indeed. The challenge of being a journalist is that your search results are so ridiculous that actually, there's a lot of stuff that you might not want surfaced. I mean, like kink clubs and things like that like I'm happy for people to go to, but I don't know if I would necessarily like want it splashed over the front page of a newspaper. But then also at the same time I'm looking at Nazism, so like you kind of have like the Google algorithm being unable to pin me down as a person. It would just be so confusing because it would say you're interested in this and this and this and this and things that don't necessarily go together in ways that you might necessarily expect. Would I want sort of being shared in court or whatever that I search for things around sex work at the same time as searching for things around war and gore and weird internet subcultures and furries and COVID vaccines? The furry that did the COVID vaccine is fantastic as well. One of the best stories I ever did. But that sort of thing is what you might not necessarily want in a police interview. The second question to which there is no answer that will also get us sued in that case because of the libel aspect is the other side of the AI and policing story. There's a story about how a lot of UK Met police officers have been censured by their bosses because they've either not turned up when they're meant to, or they've checked in and then left early, and things like that, having had an AI system run through that data to try and find anything and everything that they could about patterns within that data. So what is the most embarrassing work habit or thing that you have done that you would not like to be made public by an AI system that could dredge up your slyly getting away from work early on or something like that?
I think, again, that comes down to being a journalist, right? That means that your search history is always going to be weird. Your work habits are always going to be weird. And I think the thing is I'm not sure if the deadline-driven stuff came first or being a journalist came first, but I will leave things to the last minute and then do it in 30 seconds before it has to be done. So what you will see not leaving early, not leaving like just relatively relaxed working style. Then suddenly you get towards the actual end of it and like, oh crap, I've got about 2 days to work. And then I'm the most efficient you've ever seen. Unbelievable. I can write you a breaking news story in 15 minutes if you want it to be done so, but probably I should not leave a really long feature that definitely requires a week's work just so I only have a week to do it, even though I've been given a month. It's idiotic. So many journalists I speak to have it. It's a disease. And I've worked so hard to try and fix it. All the sort of Pomodoro method of time management, all of the sort of the switching off social, all of that sort of stuff. Still, I will hit a deadline. Always, never missed one. But it will be. I will never be early to a deadline.
In all of those things that you have tested, have you tested actually properly the other no scroll?
Oh, I tested the no scroll for about half an hour, then I want to punch it in the head. just absolutely not. I think infantilizing working habits. So because I downloaded that stupid app, I'm getting ads across all my social feeds for similar shit of like, if you pick up your phone, you kill a dinosaur. Fuck off. Like there's a little, like an actual sort of skeuomorphic little ball thing that then gives birth to a dinosaur. And if you pick up your phone, you murder it. Firstly, stop. I don't want to murder a dinosaur, but I don't want to be infantilized to the point where somehow this addiction can be dealt with by the risk of killing animated animals. It's insane. So no, I don't want to try that. I think people culturally, educationally, and psychologically, that's the word, need to be worked through this. And I think there is a cultural issue around attention and what attention addiction do, and whether or not that's social media's fault is a whole big issue. And how people are very easily distracted because they're given infinite things and a very sort of Huxley-like everything is fine because there's so much to do sort of principle. How we work through that is a deep cultural problem that won't be solved by killing animated animals, nor will it be solved by the Pomodoro method. So it's 20 minutes on, 10 minutes break, 20 minutes on, you time it, and you're really strict about it. But something fundamental in the education of young people specifically, but also everybody, and adult education is very important. There is work to be done. I find it so annoying. But then I also thought Supersize Me was annoying because I thought people should be able to give them the choice. And actually, I've since changed my view that giving people portions that big is obviously going to mean people eat portions that big. But so shows what I know.
I can't talk. I went to an all-you-can-eat buffet last night.
What genre?
It was weird. It was an Indian buffet, but also had like Chinese food.
Oh, is it like a world food? But it's my mum's favorite thing to do is go to a thing where she can get like a chow mein, but also get like a little bit of curry and get like a little taco. Is it that sort of vibe?
Yeah, globalism writ large. Gotta love it. Crashed is an Everything is Popular is Wrong production.
Yeah, but because I'm so chaos today, I don't actually have that bit of spiel.
Let me see if I can remember it. Crashed is an Everything is Popular is Wrong production. Our title music is by Nuffer. You can find us on Substack at crashedcrash.substack.com. You can always email us. He's Alex at crash.org.uk. I'm Chris at org.uk. Please do give us feedback and a good rating, and we will see you next week. That's horrific that I remembered that. Jesus Christ. It's ingrained in my mind now.
No, see you next week.